Josh with the Financial Advisor Car Guy. Today I thought I'd take a seat and sit and chat with you guys a little bit about what it looks like to budget for your next build. This is always my favorite part of the process because not only do I get to shop for the next car, I get to shop for the things that make it my own. Whether it be new wheels and tires, new interior, new paint, new details of whatever sort. You get to really fine-tune your decisions in this process. And so if it's a real light build and you're just doing some cosmetic upgrades, you might not need as big a budget as you might as if it's a frame-off restoration or you're going to dig into the paint and the bodywork and all that stuff. And so today we're going to dive into a couple of my past projects and discuss what it looks like to find the right deal for the right price and then put together a spreadsheet of sorts to kind of keep yourself on track with what your spending needs to look like. And so I'm going to use a couple of examples, but first and foremost, if you've got some cash in your pocket, you want to make sure that you're not spending it all on the car itself. So for example, if I started with $5,000, I don't necessarily want to take the entire $5,000 and turn it into a vehicle that's maybe not running or driving or needs all sorts of things, right? I want to take maybe half that money and figure out what it is that I can do with it to get the project in my garage, but then still have enough money to go buy the parts and pieces that I need. So what I might do is I might take half of this money, right? So $2,500. I'm going to assume this is about half my stack. And I might put that over here and assume that money is spent, right? That's the vehicle. Next, what I'll do is I'll take whatever money is left, in this case another $2,500, and I'll prioritize what it is that the car needs. Is it new interior? Is it new wheels and tires? Is it maybe just tires? Is it a new exhaust system? Is it new brakes? Is it new lighting? Is it new decals? Is it new whatever that might be? And then I'll kind of scour the internet. I use my iPad all the time for this, and I just search, whether it be eBay, Craigslist, using Google, whatever it is. I try to find the best deal I can on every part that I think that I might need. And then I'll create a spreadsheet, and I'll put in the name of the item, where I found it, and for what price. Once I have that list created, then I go back and I make sure that I do the math to total up the columns and figure out if I have enough money in my budget to build it the way I want to. If I don't, I might have to remove an item or two. Maybe it doesn't get those racing stripes, or maybe it doesn't get that bolt-on spoiler, or whatever it is. And again, I prioritize and kind of budget the build from start to finish. Many times you're going to get stuck with labor bills and things like that you may not anticipate depending on how intensive the project's going to be. But if you have room for some variance, you're probably going to come out okay. The goal of this isn't so much just to build the car on budget, but to build it with quality parts, with a quality look, with desirable aspects that thus make it easier to sell the car when the time comes. And in a perfect world, you might take that $5,000 you invested into the vehicle, list it on eBay, Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, Auto Tempest, whatever, and turn that $5,000 into $10,000, right? In a perfect world, you could double your money, or better, or worse. If we use my '65 Mustang that I just sent off to France as my example, I did have a $5,000 budget. I didn't exceed the budget, and I did quite a lot of work to that car, but I did all the labor myself. And then when I went to sell it, I didn't get to double it like I'd hoped. It ended up selling for about $7,800. And so, I still would consider that a win. But looking back over the history of my automotive career, if you will, my wife and I have been married 15 plus years, and we've owned over 30 cars, many of which have been projects. And I can't think of a single project car that I didn't at least turn some profit on. I've never lost money on a project. I've never even just broken even on a project. I've always made money, but it might be 5% or 10%, clear on up to more than double. I've done that a couple of times. And so, at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we're sticking to that budget as best as we can. Not to say that budget can't be modified along the way. Another thing you can consider is when you buy a car that's maybe running and driving already, there might be some parts on that car that are still usable to somebody else that you might want to replace with something that's more your style. I think real commonly of wheels and tires. That seems to be a very common thing that people will upgrade or make their own when they purchase a project car, or any car for that matter. any wheel and tire set is going to have some sort of value. Even if the tires are shot, maybe the wheels hold some value. Even if the wheels are scratched, right? Someone somewhere might want them for some reason. And you can generally offload some of those parts to help recoup some money that goes back into your budget. And so I used to have a 1962 Ford Fairlane, and it had some stock steel wheels on it. It was a 1962, and it was a 5-bolt wheel pattern. And the wheels and tires that came on that car were staggered. The back was about an inch bigger in diameter, and I want to say an inch or inch and a half wider. And all 4 tires were real good, but that wasn't exactly my style. They used the wobble bolts, and so they would fit Ford, Chevy, Dodge, a lot of 5-bolt vehicles of that era. And so I put them on Craigslist. I had a guy from 3 hours away want them, and he drove, picked them up. It was a snowy winter night, and yeah, he drove all that way just to get them. And I couldn't sell them locally to save my life. They were on Craigslist locally for, I don't know how long, a month and a half, something like that. I don't think I got a single person interested. And when my ad expired, I relisted it in the Portland area, which again is about 3 hours away from me. And I think it was within a couple of days, somebody was on my front porch picking them up for full asking price. And he drove 3 hours to do it. So I recouped a lot more on those wheels and tires than I was anticipating. Generally, when I sell a part, I mark it up a little bit more than I think that I'm going to get for it, because I always want to have that negotiation room. Someone's always going to want to lowball you and get the best deal they can. And so I try to kind of look at it from both angles, if I'm the buyer or the seller, figuring out what's the best approach to price something appropriately so that everybody's happy. So with that said, wheels and tires being our example here, a new set of wheels and tires, the ones that I wanted for that Fairlane, I think the wheels were about $550 shipped to my front door on eBay. I bought some tires from Tire Rack, and then I had a local tire shop mount and balance them, and I think they charged me $15 per tire, so $60 for the set. And I was into that whole set for $750, and I sold those mag wheels with the tires on them for, I want to say $400 or $450. So the new wheels and tires that I picked that were my style that I wanted maybe cost me $300 or $350 out of pocket. So it allowed my budget to stretch a little further. That car also had a little bit of a lifted suspension. The gentleman that I bought it from was going for a gasser style, and he put spring spacers in the front and wheel blocks in the back to kind of give the car more of a raked look. And while it didn't look bad, it just wasn't my style. I think that those old long sedan sled style cars need to be low, not high. So first thing I did was I pulled off those wheel spacers, I pulled off the blocks, I flipped the blocks over with new U-bolts and got the back end nice and low. I pulled the front springs out, cut them, put them back, reassembled everything, lowered the car about 3 inches with $0 out of pocket. I just recycled the parts that were already on the car. So that was a very cool upgrade. It gave me the look that I wanted after buying the wheels that I wanted and got that all dialed in. Next was the interior. Now that car is a little bit unique in that you can't just buy an interior kit. It also had a bench front seat instead of buckets. And you could find front upholstery but not back. And it was just really challenging. They wouldn't match the door cards or the dash or any of that stuff. So I ended up pulling the seats out, recarpeting it myself with some universal automotive carpet off of Amazon. I built new door cards, plywood, very thin plywood, and some speaker box carpet, and got it all dialed in the way I wanted it, and was really pleased with the results. Now the prior owner of that vehicle had rebuilt the engine. He was a mechanic, a hobby mechanic, and really dove into the motor and the suspension of the car, so I didn't have to do a lot, but he didn't do anything to the interior, so that's where I spent the majority of my time. The car ran and drove real nice. It did end up having a little slip in the transmission, and I didn't know that until after I sold the car. A guy came and test drove it, and it was having a little bit of trouble shifting between second and third. It was a 3 on the tree. And so driving to and from my work in low gears, it wasn't a big deal. It was just completely fine to drive around town, but it wasn't until you got up to speed and shifted into third that the transmission would slip a little bit going from second to third, and the guy on his test drive mentioned that it actually was grinding a little bit going into third, but he was pretty confident in his skill. If he needed to rebuild it, he could do so. And as it turns out, he did. He did buy the car and took it home. And on his way home, he texted me that the transmission was going out. And limped it home, immediately pulled the transmission and rebuilt it over a weekend. About a month later, I found it back on Facebook Marketplace for sale for about $4,000 more than I sold it for, primarily because of the transmission. And I don't know how long it took for him to sell that car, but it was a pretty cool car. I mean, as you can see in the pictures, it had a lot of style to it. It had a lot of swagger, if you will. I did take it to one car show here and had a few looks. I didn't have it for sale yet. I probably should have, but people liked it, and it was a fun car to drive around. You don't see a lot of those old Fairlanes anyway, but this one had, as you again see in the pictures, it was a maroon bodied car with a white roof. When I reupholstered the front seats and the back seats, what I ended up doing was purchasing that Mexican blanket style cover, cut it to fit, pulled the seats out of the car, and tugged on them every direction so that they fit as snugly as possible. And then between using zip ties and some automotive grade rope, string type of stuff, securing it to the underside of the chairs. And the upholstery looked great. I was able to get the lines nice and straight. Everything looked really, really good. We also redid the dash. I had to, the old dash mat was warped and faded and discolored and cracking and everything. And so what I ended up doing was ripping it off the car and using a piece of plywood to cut myself a new template, and then had some leather, like faux leather fabric that I purchased at Joann's Fabric, and it wasn't very expensive, and I was able to use my staple gun and get it to fit on that dash really, really tightly, and then wedge that dashboard back in. And then use all the original trim. I polished all the trim with some steel wool and got it to shine real nice, and then put it all back together, and it looked fantastic. Same thing with the back dash. There were some factory speakers in there that were 50 plus years old that were just completely destroyed. And so I pulled those out and just threw them away. Cut a new dash panel for the back as well, but I didn't cut speaker holes. I just left it clean and blank, wrapped it with the same faux leather, and really got it dialed in. And then I used that same material as accents throughout the interior, and it worked really, really well. Everything came together really nicely, and I think I was less than $300 into the entire interior, and it was all brand new. It was all brand new. So you can do things on a budget without, spending too much money if you don't want to or if you don't need to. And again, doing the labor yourself or watching YouTube for other videos that help you get through things is really a smart way to do it, because you're going to keep more money in your pocket and keep yourself under budget. So on that car, I was able to stay below my budget. I think I had a $5,000 budget for that car as well, and I spent $2,400 on the car itself. Now, I don't generally run out and buy $10,000 or $15,000 or $20,000 project cars. I try to keep it in the $2,000 to $3,000 range on the high end. That way I've got some cash available to fix the car the way I want it and then sell it for more, hopefully. And so I'm pulling up the spreadsheet for that Ford Fairlane. I bought the car for $2,400. I put $47 into carpet, $52 into the back seat cover, $72 into the front seat cover, $116 into the door cards and the dash cover panels, $17 into a new steering wheel cover, which was a leather wrapped, very vintage looking deal. The wheels and tires were only $520, I was mistaken. And then I sold the factory wheels and tires off the vehicle for $300. So those new wheels and tires only cost me $220. Let's see what else. I did buy new floor mats, new door handles, some touch-up paint and primer. I did Dynamat underneath the carpet when I redid the carpet. Bed lined the trunk, new lug nuts, and a couple of gaskets. And my total with the car purchase and the parts, everything came to $3,660. I ended up selling the car for $5,000, so I profited $1,300 and change. So all in all, not a bad vehicle to buy, fix, flip. It was a real light duty restoration, if you will. I didn't have to do a bunch of paint and body work. I just had to touch up a few things. There were some things that were still needing to be redone. Obviously the transmission was kind of an issue, but he didn't fear that at all. He was a mechanically inclined enough guy to know how to fix it. The rear bumper on a 62 Fairlane is near impossible to find, and mine had a big dent in it. So that was one thing that I couldn't fix the way I wanted to. I couldn't even take it off and straighten it because it was such a hard steel that I would have had to send it off to get it, straightened and then re-chromed and all that stuff, which cost hundreds of dollars. And that would have extended beyond my budget, so I just chose not to fix it. And when I went to price the car to sell it, I priced it accordingly. I think I listed the car for $5,500. He offered me $5,000 because of the transmission deal. I took it. He was happy with that. I was happy with that. And we walked away with some money. Beyond that, it was a good fun car that I drove around town for quite a few months. And then the other way to look at it is, if you profit on the car while you're enjoying it, you're getting paid to drive it, more or less. And so I kind of discussed that with that BMW Z3 in a prior episode. I made a few $1,000s and only drove the car for a few months, so I was getting paid over $1,000 a month to drive that car and enjoy it. And this car wasn't a whole bunch different. I mean, making $1,300, and I had it less than 6 months, 5 or 6 months. So I probably got paid $200, $225 to drive that thing around. So if you can get paid to drive your car, enjoy it, fix it the way you want it, to the style you like, sell it, move on from that car without losing your tail or losing any money, period, I would call that a win. So again, I didn't get to turn my $5,000 into $10,000. I wasn't even in the car $5,000 in this case. I was into the car $3,600 and change. Sold the car for $5,000. So, not quite maybe a 40% take on that, which I'll be happy about. And then the 65 Mustang, again, I was into it for $5,000, sold it for, we'll call it $7,500. I made 50% on that car. So those are a couple of good examples of building a budget based on what you need to build the car the way you want to, and then sticking to it. And again, selling car parts away to help recoup some of that budget that's spent. So if you have any questions or thoughts or concerns about any of this stuff, or want to talk deeper, by all means, shoot me an email. You can also hit me up on Instagram. Please like, subscribe, ring the bell, and comment down below. And until next time, may every investment you make be a good one.